I left the city, I've been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to Smash or Pass, Episode 3, part of the Smash Accept network of podcasts. Guys, I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter, at Dynasty_DadFF. We finally got the tea kettle out of the way. We got everything set up. Mike and I are ready to bring you some great action with our first guest, which is somebody you guys are already familiar with. But welcome my co-host, Mike Lamoureux. That's at Fantasy Nerd Boy. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. Tea's all out of the way. I know that we're tackling the 23 class compared to the 22 class, and that's something that I get asked about a lot as far as how I'm going to compare the 107 to Olave or, the 106 to Wilson, stuff like that. So I'm excited to kind of get that in motion and put, the 23 picks to faces, to kind of compare and contrast. And it's a really fun thing to do, especially before the draft.
Yeah, and this is an exciting time because we get to look at that, right? So, right now, 1 through 5 are looking pretty set. The rest of the stuff's getting a little bit more fluid, but it's what we're trying to do is bring you that action where you're saying, okay, we know where Garrett Wilson is. We know what he's available to do. Who compares to that area, and I put out a thread with a value thread. We got over 5,000 votes across all of them, which is going to give you guys a nice idea of what Twitter thinks these guys are worth versus what we're telling you. And nobody better to bring on than, you guys are familiar with him. He's obviously our co-host at Smash Accept. Mung, welcome to Smash or Pass Podcast. How you doing?
Hey, glad to be here. It's going to be fun. I think I've listened to the first couple of your guys' podcasts, and certainly some of the things I don't always agree with, but from a broad perspective, I think there's a lot of good strategy talk, and this is the time prior to the NFL draft, prior to the rookie drafts, where you can make some value trading for or away, these highly valued 2023 first-round rookie picks. So I think this is a good discussion that a lot of people have been wondering about, comparing 2022 rookies heading into their second year versus those highly anticipated 2023 class.
And I think it's always a good exercise that we do. That way you guys can compare things. And, we talk a lot how Dynasty is so cyclical, and we get so excited for that incoming class. And we always seem to be like, you know what, let's start pushing last year's class back and get excited for these. And the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is, man, this 22 wide receiver rookie class, is one of the best that I can remember in a long time. We were advocating quite a bit that after 108, you should start moving in, start looking into those random 23 firsts. But the wide receiver class has shown out, aside from Jameson Williams, who we're going to talk about, it is the talk. Mike, you talked about it. I get at least 10 DMs a day where people are asking me about one of these guys out of that 22 class, and you're doing startups left and right. And these guys, their value just keeps going up and up and up.
Yeah, and I expect that to continue. It's really hard because there's such a shift that happens at all times. The combine's going to happen. Testing is going to come out. You're going to see videos on Twitter. You're going to see people, making fantastic catches, sideline toe touches and, just little things that are going to boost the value of these picks higher and higher. So making these comparisons right now, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because, people could never fathom trading Kenneth Walker for Najee last year at this time of the year. That would be insane. Nobody would ever think about that.
Right.
So it's really going to be, to keep that in mind, where it's really hard to compare these classes right now until we have kind of an idea of their transition to the NFL. But,
well, I think that's a great point. And a lot of people, so they saw the original list of, how I had things ranked. And people were like, oh, my gosh, Dad, how can you rank, if, for instance, how can you have 110, 111 over George Pickens after the season he had? Or how can you have the 108 over Christian Watson where he is? Or how could you have, all these different scenarios? And what we really try to do at Smash Accept is, and we're going to have some amazing analysts come on and talk about these rookie class over the next couple of weeks. but we're trying to assess who that next guy is so you can make those insulated trades, you can make those moves and really extract value. And on the flip side, guys like we didn't see a ton from Jamison Williams. We didn't see a ton from Wan'Dale Robinson, because of injuries and things like that. Where can we extract value from that as well? So let's just jump right into it, because I know once we start talking about these wide receivers, you guys are going to have a ton to say. Right now, the thing that we did first, there is not a guy that in this wide receiver class from 22 or 23 that compares with the 101 or 102. Right now it's Bijan Robinson, and he's going at the end of the first. Mike, the earliest I've seen is 109. But the latest I've seen is 112. I mean, he's almost a staple of that late first round at this point.
Yeah, I actually saw him go 106. My buddy
Superflex.
sent me the screenshot. Superflex 106.
Whoa.
He went before Fields, T. Law. He went before Lamar. He went actually before Chase. So he went before a lot of guys, and he sent me the screenshot and he said, "Hey man, is this what he's going for now? Can I go trade him for Chase Plus or?" And I was like, "No man, that's not accurate." Somebody really just wanted a share of them, and you
get that in the early part of startups, right? You get those guys that they're literally joining a startup to get Bijan because they had no shares, and we teach top 3, bottom 3, so you and I have plenty of shares of them. Mung, one thing I've been getting all the time is, and John and I talked about it, if you guys haven't heard our rookie pod, we're going to do round 2 as soon as we're done with this one, but we were talking about at least 50% of the teams that got Bijan Robinson are not prepared to have Bijan Robinson. Like, he is a running back who's going to be, we talk about that's that last piece of the puzzle. And one thing, Mung, that I've been advocating is if you have multiple picks, you got some late 24 firsts, I've been advocating to people, they're like, I'm not quite ready for Bijan. What can I do? And I said, let's package Bijan and a late 24 first, or Bijan and, a veteran that they don't necessarily need at that running back or wide receiver position, for a Justin Jefferson, for a Jamar Chase, for one of those guys that we talk about building around those wide receivers. And most people, I'm saying, either do that or try to trade back in this particular rookie draft. But taking a running back at 106 to 112 before he's taken a snap, even though he is my dynasty RB1. Mung, talk to me about some of the pitfalls there and some of the questions I know you've been answering as well.
Well, I mean, to start off with, I think I want to mention first and foremost, for those who haven't maybe listened to Smash Accept, that I'm still diving into the 2023 rookie. So I'm using John's rankings because John knows what he's talking about. He watches a ton of college and super knowledgeable. But at the same time, I think from a macro perspective, we have to remember that, again, if you're not looking at specific players and you're just taking these rookie picks as what they are, like mystery boxes, essentially, right? In general, we just know that the value of these picks, especially the 1.01 this year, is going to rise from February to March to April to May. And in general, I think it's fine to trade Bijan for, a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, one of those elite tier players. But you don't have to right now. I think the thing is, with a lot of these active dynasty leagues where there are constant trades, I love trading as much as anyone else, right? Sending out offers, countering, going back and forth. But at the same time, sometimes, especially around this time of year, the smartest thing you can do is just hold. Right now, perhaps you can trade the 1.01 plus a 2024 second for a Chase or a Jefferson, something along those lines. I mean, we just saw Chase had a great game against Kansas City, and obviously Jefferson balled out in 2022. But in May, in June, it's not out of the question that in some leagues you might be able to get Jamar Chase plus for the 1.01, Justin Jefferson plus for the 1.01. It sounds crazy, but we know that every year the hype continues to grow until the NFL draft and then until rookie draft season. And so right now, I think really it's kind of like what we talk about in Superflex, trading away a Mahomes or Allen, right? You want a haul. And right now, we just haven't reached that peak valuation for the 1.01 or any of the top 4 or 5 rookie picks.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I have a question. I'm going to pose it to you, Mike, here. We just saw he's at an area here where if he's going 106 to 112, and now, can that pick go up? And Mung, I'm just playing a little bit devil's advocate, but I mean, how much more can Bijan's value go up, but can it go down? I mean, let's say he goes to a scenario where he goes into a backfield like, I've seen the Chargers, or I've seen Dallas, where he's not going to be, he's going to split carries a little bit more. I mean, is there a scenario years past, this year, when it was Zeke, when it was Saquon, when it was Jonathan Taylor, those guys were second-round picks, and they slowly started to inch their way up as the 101. This year, we're looking at Bijan Robinson, is that we're saying firmly 109 to 112, just like Trevor Lawrence was 2 years ago, going 106 to 112 this time of year. So, I mean, there is that aspect of it, too, where you could see them start to slide back a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you can – I think – not this time last year, but a little bit before this, we were talking about Spiller being close to the 101, so it was, you anything can change. Chase dropping passes in camp had people trading him away. I bought Chase for Miles Sanders, at the rookie draft. I traded him for Miles. I got Chase for Miles Sanders. So just because in camp he was dropping passes and people got scared. So, there's a reactionary crowd that sees those kind of things. And it's pretty, it's volatile is the best word for it, because you could see Stroud and Young kind of blow up, and you could see them easily slide to the 101 and 102 spots, and then have him be the 103. And with that, you're probably going to see him slide in startups too. But it's just, there's nothing for sure right now. I always tell people the landscape is constantly changing, so it's not an easy thing to predict, and you can't tell. I don't see him ever going before the 106. That would be insane, at least before the draft. But
it's good to have that dialogue. I mean, I know it doesn't necessarily go with our show, but we got Mung on here. We wanted to talk about that a little bit. Right now, we ran that smash or pass value thread. Garrett Wilson right now I have as the top wide receiver from 2022 or even 2023. He doesn't go at the 101, the 102, but Mike, 59% of Dynasty owners said that they would, and this is over 1,000 votes on this one. I mean, like, that is a smash accept record for how much interaction we're getting. And Mike, I mean, almost 60% of our listeners are saying they would rather have Garrett Wilson than the 103. Talk to me a little bit about that value there, because, I mean, when we did Smash 7, Garrett Wilson went 302, the 103 went, 205 range, and we are talking about a super flex league.
Yeah, in super flex, I would never take Wilson over the 103. I think even if, a Rodgers came over to the Jets and, he was the starting quarterback over there, I still would probably take the 103 over Wilson. I love him. I think anybody that knows me knows that I'm a big Wilson guy, but I can't take him over a Stroud, at the 103. It just, that the value of him is just going to go up and up and up. And, it just wouldn't make sense as far as Dynasty goes to even think about doing that.
We're only 2 pods in here to this new, and he's been labeled one of our guys. Everybody in the Patreon's like talking Garrett Wilson. Everybody keeps messaging me things. I mean, Mung, we're looking at a guy where, the other day I tweeted, I'm going all in and buying high on him as potentially a top 5 Dynasty wide receiver. 83 receptions, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. During the weeks where it was not Zach Wilson, he was wide receiver 8 overall, and he's in a crowd over 1,000 yards with Waddle, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase were the only guys in the last 5 years to do so. Mung, as far as the values you're seeing, right now we have him, 60% of people said they'd rather have him than the 103. 87% said they'd rather have him than the 104. What kind of trades are you seeing, and is this a guy that you're buying in on?
Yeah, I think at that range, it's tough, because I agree with Mike in that I don't know that I would take him over Young or Stroud in Superflex. But again, a lot can change, right? We were talking about Malik Willis as the 1.02. or the 1.01 even in Superflex leagues this time last year until that precipitous fall in the NFL draft. So,
well, we're trying to buy that next quarterback, right? I mean, you and I did a podcast last week where we're talking about that Superflex super shortage, which is what's really, when Mike and I saw that, we're like, whoa, red flags here a little bit. We love Garrett Wilson, but let's pump the brakes because that quarterback position is very slim.
Yeah, and I think it really depends, too, on where you're projecting some of the 2023 wide receivers to go, right? Because towards the top of the draft, there are a lot of questionable situations. And there's a lot of questions for each of the 2022 top wide receivers, right? I mean, when you're talking about Wilson and then London and Olave as well, all three of these teams are kind of in quarterback purgatory, right? So the start of free agency and potentially the NFL draft are going to shift those guys quite a bit because, like you said, if Aaron Rodgers does sign with the Jets, whether or not you value it, as a huge rise, Wilson's stock will rise, right? So depending on what you think is going to happen in free agency, maybe you want to hold Wilson right now, even if you're getting the 1.03 and you know that right now you prefer the 1.03, right? Because if Rodgers does go there, then you can probably get the 1.03 plus even, just because of that perception that Rodgers is going to make Wilson an elite top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. Compared to the other guys, it really depends because, again, right now, looking at the draft capital of some of these teams, it's hard to project where we expect some of these wide receivers to go. And ultimately, that's going to determine, kind of where you slot in Wilson, London, Olave in that 103 to 108 or so range.
I love that, Mung, because last couple weeks, Mike and I are just exact same things. We're just vibing, repeating each other. And I love that. And you and I talk about it a lot on Smash Accept, where you and I don't always necessarily agree on players but it's the process. And when we get there, iron sharpens iron. And I love those kind of takes because I'm always bullish on what I'm saying, but then sometimes you just ground me back in. And I like that. The next guy we have on the list, and again, we're going by where Twitter has and where the rankings are, is that 104. So firmly, everyone has the 104 slightly. It's Drake London, 51%, 104, 49%. Mung, I know you absolutely love Drake London, and what's not to love? I mean, over the last 5 games of the season, when Ritter took over, you're looking at 9.6 targets per game, 3 games with 95 yards or more, an absolute alpha. You look at what he did, and it's got to be one of the more underrated wide receiver seasons. I mean, you didn't hear a ton about it, but 72 for 866 and 4 touchdowns. All of those are top 3 as far as rookies. 2.7% drop rating, second. 83.2 PFF grade. He was the number 1 rookie wide receiver in that area. He was your 101, 102 in that whole process. If someone comes to you today and they say, you know what, Mung, I'm going to give you the 104 for Drake London, are you going to smash or pass?
I would lean smash for 2 reasons. One, I do think the value of these top 5 picks is going to go up because there are some highly talented players who going to the right landing spot is going to, really grow their hype after the NFL draft. 2, I do agree with John's rankings. I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. I have him at the 1.04 right now, and I would potentially take him over all the 2022 rookie wide receiver class. So I would slightly lean those guys over London. And part of the reason, too, is because as good as London was towards the back half of that year, one, Pitts was hurt, right, which kind of concentrated that target share even more. And 2, I am a little bit concerned that Arthur Smith really wants to pound the rock in Atlanta, despite having Pitts and London. And, what does that mean for London in fantasy as well as Pitts? Because we saw that really tanked their fantasy value in 2022. And that remains a murky situation going forward, even assuming they get a quarterback upgrade.
I like it. It was actually last week on the pod, John and I both moved. We moved Smith-Njigba above Gibbs into that 4 spot. I thought for sure you were going to smash London. Mike, I personally have it Wilson, and then I have London and the 104 just almost dead even. I slightly prefer the 104 with Smith and Jigba, but I'm seeing a lot of reports of Smith and Jigba not having that same kind of draft capital. I mean, Garrett Wilson and Drake London both went top 10. We've seen it a little bit. If I come to you the same way and I say, hey, you got Drake London, I got the 104, and I offer you that, is that a smash or a pass for you?
I would smash that. Yeah. So, much like Mung said, that 104 is going to increase in value, and London, unless they get a new quarterback, is not going to jump like the 104 is going to jump. Arthur Smith has showed that he doesn't care what kind of draft capital those wideouts have, on that team, whether it's that high capital they spent on Pitts or London. They're still not getting the target share that I think the fantasy community thinks that they deserve. So, I mean, there's no signs pointing to that changing over there, unless Arthur Smith goes, or unless, there's an upgrade from Ritter. Not to say that Ritter didn't improve the last few games, but I just can see the 104 eclipsing London's value by a lot towards the draft, towards the NFL draft, and then towards the rookie draft itself.
Well, and the insulation of the 104 is, let's say Jahmyr Gibbs goes to Buffalo, or let's say Jahmyr Gibbs goes to, one of those electric situations, or Miles Sanders. We have a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack, a lot of moving parts, but Miles Sanders goes away and Jahmyr Gibbs goes to the Eagles, and we have one of those kind of scenarios that there's always more insulation. There's always more, directions you can go when you have the 104. Everybody wants to move up. It's like when you have a startup pick, right? Once you draft that player, you eliminate some of the guys from your trade partners, right? Like, not everybody in your league wants Drake London, but everybody in your league wants 104s. What I'm kind of hearing from both of you guys is that value is going to continue to increase with rookie fever. Not so much that JSN is that much more elite than what Drake London would be. And I love JSN. I did a thread on him. The other guy that's in that area is Chris Olave, and you guys put 74% of you guys would rather have Olave than the 105, and it was 56-44 for the 104. So, I mean, Mike, if you're on the clock right now, and let's take the rookie picks out of this, you got Olave or you got London, and this is one where it's kind of a split camp. I don't value either of them necessarily that much higher than the 104, but I value both of them over the 105.
Yeah, I value London. I would say a good amount higher than I value Olave. I just think London has the ceiling where Olave, we saw him have probably the best case scenario. People kind of look at his quarterback situation, and I think he had the best situation that any of the rookies had by far.
That's sad to say because it's Andy Dalton, right? But it really was.
And when you have, so the thing is though, when you have a guy that's been in the league for that long, they don't care. They don't care about their stats. They don't care about throwing interceptions. They don't care about anything. They're just trying to get some wins, and they're just whatever. You know what I mean? Go home and spend time with their family. So they'll throw the yellow balls. They'll throw those balls in coverage. They'll do whatever. That target share is going to be way up. They're going to get the looks. They're going to see it's perfect. It's like Joe Flacco with Wilson. He didn't care. He's just throwing the ball up there. He doesn't care if you have three guys on you. He's just going to throw the ball to you. So, I mean, I don't see Olave boosting up his value significantly.
Well, and we knew from year one. I mean, like when we had Matt Waldman on, he said Olave was the most pro ready, and that was his wide receiver one of the class. And we knew from year one he was ready to go, right? He was a guy that was going to jump in and he was going to produce. Then it's just the ideal situation. Michael Thomas gets hurt, Jarvis Landry goes down, and then all of a sudden, but you can't deny, I mean, 10th in the league in targets per route run, open rate 7th, yards per route run 10th. I mean, over 1,000 yards as a wide receiver, and really should have been one of those finalists for Rookie of the Year. Mung, how close do you have both? I feel like there's a huge gap, right? We have Wilson, and then we have Olave, and we have London, and then we got a big gap once we drop down to the next guy in this class. But how close do you have Olave and London in your rankings?
So yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite direction on this one from you guys, because I have Wilson, London, and Olave all in the same tier, alongside Smith and Jigba and Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnson as of right now, because
Ooh.
I think
We have it right now as Wilson and Smith and Jigba, London, Olave, and then what would the 105, which is for Gibbs for me, and then 106, 107 right now. John has 106 as Evans, I have as Addison, and then I have 7 as Quentin Johnson as that next tier down. But go ahead. I was just clarifying a little bit. So we have most of those guys in that same tier, just not Addison and Johnson.
Right. And I think where my disagreement stems is I think, if anything, Olave has a ton of room to grow. Because he managed to do what he did, on pace for Offensive Rookie of the Year prior to the injury with, again, Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill, and Pete Carmichael, who wouldn't even use Alvin Kamara, where that offense was just so bad. And Olave managed to do what he did despite all that. And I do think that depending on who they hire down there, and whether or not they can make a quarterback upgrade of some kind.
Hey, they got a 23 first today.
Yeah, exactly.
For
right?
Sean Payton.
And so, I mean, great management by the Saints as always. And I think that's why I do believe in them, right? Because they traded up to get Olave. So clearly they believe in him. They've been good at scouting wide receivers historically. And I do think that Olave has elite top 5 potential, not that far off from Garrett Wilson, Drake London. And so my current valuation would be within that, 1.3, 1.4 to 1.7, 1.8 range. If you can get any of these 2022 receivers plus, a second or a couple seconds, then I would consider selling for those guys. But on the flip side, if you can get, the 104 or 1 through 108 plus a second for any of those guys, I would, make that move in reverse, because I think that entire area of the draft is very fluid as of right now.
I like it. So this a little bit off script. We're kind of like rolling here with it. Let's talk about this a little bit, Mike. Is like, with the way I look at it is I almost have Olave as maybe someone in my rankings who very, very close to like T. Higgins, where he would be borderline wide receiver 1, but he's going to be a perfect wide receiver 2 in that area, where I have the other 2 a little bit higher. And I know we're splitting hairs, but talk to me a little bit about what you were a little bit off on Olave, and Mung was up a little bit more. Talk to me a little bit more to kind of convince that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm off on Olave. I would just say that I don't see his value going up the way I see London's, is what I was trying to get at.
Okay.
As far as London is going to boom, I think he hasn't even scraped his potential as far as I'm concerned. Whereas Olave already kind of showed us what he is. So that's the difference in value for me. I want to take the guy that hasn't even touched where we think he's going to be, as opposed to we already kind of saw what Olave is. And then not to say that, that's a bad thing, but I'm a little more risk adverse where it comes to, I want the guy that's going to grow in value. And then, to kind of put him against picks, I have Olave with Addison, in the sense that Addison is going to be the most pro-ready wide receiver of this class. I could see Addison being the Olave of this class. So it's kind of hard for me to put him over Addison.
Yeah. And John and I were talking about that, is like and when you're looking at those elite top 5 to 8 dynasty wide receivers, you're looking for a guy that separates. You're looking at a guy that has the athleticism, that's going to get the target share. And I think Addison checks all those boxes except the extreme athleticism. Like, he seems like a guy who's going to be, like you said, John and I were talking, where he's pro ready. I feel like he's a rock solid back end wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for 5 to 8 years, set it and forget it. But I don't think he has that same upside that Jackson Smith and Jigba has, that Wilson has, that London has. In my early tape, and he was one of the first threads that I did. I love everything I see about him, but that athleticism, that ability to take it to the next level, isn't quite the same.
Yeah, he doesn't have the big play that JSN has. He doesn't have that ability to kind of break it loose and then break the game wide open with that.
And I think that's what's making him affordable. Like, I'm seeing mocks now that people are getting him at 1.9, 1.10, starting to push these quarterbacks up. And that's why I keep talking about that smash zone, that 108 to 112. And John and I are going to talk about the seconds, but that area there, man, like some of these guys, Quentin Johnson's a guy that's fallen into there too, which, we don't want to talk too much about the 23 rookies, but that guy's ceiling is tremendous. You know, his floor is nowhere near what Addison's is, but his ceiling is phenomenal. Like, he is absolutely electric. Another guy, so let's talk about the next tier there. So we got 106, 107. We'll call that Addison and Quentin Johnson, you know, for our purposes here. We're looking at Burks, 108, Jameson, Watson, and 109. That's exactly how I had it. The way that Twitter, you know, voted out on this one, they had Treylon Burks at 51% versus the 108 at 49%. Mike, are you taking it? You smashing someone's? You got Treylon Burks, and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, hey, bro, I'll give you the 108 for Treylon Burks today. Smash or pass? I know Burks is your guy. That's why this one's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, so to touch on what you just said, you know, the class itself is so fluid, where I'm seeing, like you said, you know, Addison can go at the 108. QJ's going at the 108. Zach Evans going at the 108. You know, it's a different thing. Every time I do a mock, a different guy's at the 108. So it's really hard for me to even decide whether I want to do that.
And I think the tricky part of this is, like, all those kind of things, those picks are going to continue to be fluid. It's just the idea right now is to talk about these 22 rookies, and is it valid to have them in that area? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's has, if you look at it, the way the Twitter poll goes, if you look at most rankings, I mean, they have Burks in the 108 neck and neck. And now it's like, if you're in a startup, that 108 is a little bit more fluid. But Burks is the same kind of guy where you're looking at, he did not have optimal quarterback play. I mean, you look at his statistics were not anything that were mind-blowing. You know, 47 targets in 10 games, 425 yards and 1 touchdown. But the thing for me that I saw out there was, like, Treylon Burks went from 78% slot alignment in college, 78%, all the way down to 17, you know, this past year. No one's done that, where they've had to change them completely since what, you know, Justin Jefferson did. He increased by 72% playing more on the outside. If they were able to use him, I mean, we know this is a guy who has an elite ceiling if they use him like a Deebo Samuel, if they use him a little bit more and utilize him. So talk to me about Burks, and then talk to me about, we going 8, we going Burks. What do you want?
Yeah, okay. So I love Burks. I think everyone knows I love Burks. He's one of my top guys in that class. And you are right where they misused him. You know, they didn't really play into his talent level and to his specific skills. And they tried to use him, you know, just they didn't take advantage of it.
You know how many carries he had on the season? 4.
0, right?
4. He had 4 carries for 47 yards, and it's like, you got a struggling offense. How are you not incorporating that more in? I mean, it was just mind-blowing to me, because what you saw from him, he is a yak monster. You get him, you know, we were talking about if he goes the right situation with bubble screens and someone that can utilize him, like a Shanahan, the dude has that kind of dual threat where he's not necessarily as polished. He's got great body control, you know, on the sidelines and the way, you know, contact balance and things like that. But as far as, like, pure wide receiver, yeah, he wasn't going to be the same as an Olave or a, you know, a Wilson or that sense. But Tennessee just ruined that potential year one.
Yeah, maybe on purpose, to be honest. Because
okay.
I don't know. You know, hey, it's Tennessee, and they're looking for the best possible pick. I think, I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me to draft Lions and not use him the way that he should be used. But I think I'll take Burks over the 108.
Okay. We're going to stick with players that people love. Mung, Jameson Williams. Now, I got to hear a little bit of talk. I mean, obviously, year one was a letdown. I mean, we were expecting, you know, if I told you he played 6 games and had 1 catch, you wouldn't believe me, you know, but I mean, it was a matter of reintroducing him into the offense, getting him healthy and things like that. The Twitter poll we have out there right now says 49% want Williams, 51% would want that 109. So it looks like Twitter's favoring Treylon Burks a little bit over Jameson Williams at this point. Jameson Williams, you know, in a lot of areas is a screaming buy. People are willing to, you know, give him for a random 24 first. Mung, I come to you today and I say, hey, I got the 109. You got Jameson Williams. Will you trade him to me, smash or pass? And tell me how high we should be on Jameson Williams, because he's all over the place in startups. Like, these other guys are pretty standard where they're at, but he is all over, up and down.
Yeah, I would smash Jameson Williams there. I much prefer him over Treylon Burks, and I know the two of you and I disagree quite a bit on Treylon Burks, even dating back to last offseason. When I looked at him, my comp was Jordan Matthews, and I think the reason Tennessee did not use him like Deebo Samuel's because he doesn't have that kind of speed when you put him into the NFL. Where I really think the level of competition in the NFL, obviously I didn't watch a ton of Titans games all the way through, but going back and watching Treylon Burks in specifically, I just don't think he has the speed to really generate that yards after catch that he showed in college. And I saw him get tackled multiple times from behind and really just not be able to, create that kind of production after the catch. So for me, I much prefer the potential of Jameson Williams. And I know that we didn't get to see him a whole lot. And when we did, it was with Jared Goff, who we don't necessarily associate with, attacking downfield. So I think Williams is a risk reward play because a lot depends on what Detroit does at quarterback. Because if they do decide to stick with Jared Goff, I don't know that we're going to see a ton of shots to him, even though, we may get to see him schemed into space to create. But for me, I much prefer Jameson Williams over, that 1.7, 1.8 range, along with Treylon Burks.
And I think this is where you can move around a little bit. I think the difference Burks, I haven't seen, he had the highest speed rate out of college in 2021 with 22.6 miles per hour on a breakaway. So once he gets going, it's a little bit different, but maybe in open space. I love Jameson Williams. Mike, I know you've been picking him up somewhere. Mung, you and I literally led that train where it was like, this is the guy you get in a year one punt. This is the guy you go after in a rebuild now, right? Like people were giving him up for, 24 firsts and they were just throwing him out there, like underselling Jameson Williams everywhere.
Yeah, Jameson Williams comes pretty cheap from startup value right now. I think he's coming at the 7th or 8th, I believe. Hold on, I think I'm skipping here. He's a good value. I think he's gonna definitely boom this year after a full offseason with the team and getting a little more acclimated and getting that usage that we were kind of hoping he would get towards the end of the year. But
since you're a big Amon-Ra St. Brown guy, and I want to hear both of your takes on this, is how does Amon-Ra St. Brown, with a full season of Jameson Williams, what kind of breakdown do we get there? And if you're trying to either one, go from, because I hear a lot of people say, hey, I don't want to have two guys in the same wide receiver core. That doesn't bother me in Dynasty. But if I want to go from Jameson Williams to Amon-Ra St. Brown, what do I got to add? Or on the flip side, would you rather go the other way and get Jameson Williams plus for Amon-Ra St. Brown? So talk to me first about how you see the breakdown, and then talk to me a little bit about how you would go about a trade negotiation. We'll start with you, Mike, and then go to Monk.
Yeah, I don't know if because Amon is a target monster, and then Jameson is kind of the big play guy. So I don't know if I'm going to really see a massive dip in Amon from Jameson. I think they can coexist pretty well together.
So he almost comes in and takes Chark's role plus.
Yeah, he's going to have Chark's role exactly, and then he'll definitely I think have much higher ceiling than Chark, but I don't think you're going to see a huge dip in Amon's ability or value for that matter. But if I was moving off of Amon, I would actually need probably he's in the 2 first tier right now because he goes in.
He's late second and
late
Williams
second,
is in that
first
6-7. Yeah.
I would probably need a mid first on top of Jameson right now. So I'd much rather go off of Amon to Jameson as opposed to putting a first on JMO to get to Amon.
And Mung, that's got to sound wonderful to you because we've talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown so much on Smash Accept and Jameson Williams. I mean, that's got to be a buy for you. Talk to me about that situation, and is that the kind of trades that you're seeing out there if you were going from one to the other?
Man, if I could get Jameson Williams plus a first for Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, I would smash that very quickly.
You absolutely can. And he wasn't even just saying a first, he's saying a mid. And I feel like what we're really trying to do with Smash or Pass is talk about the updated, dynasty market value. And that's really where it is right now, is it's like, you might think that it's a late first, but it's probably somewhere in the mid, even during rookie fever. That's how hot Amon-Ra St. Brown is. He's moved up to Dynasty wide receiver 6, right behind Jalen Waddle by a couple of picks.
Yeah, and that's a bit too high for me, just because, I mean, it was really the Amon-Ra St. Brown show, right? Along
Absolutely.
with Jared Goff. And I think the comp I would actually make is, look back to Goff when he was with the Rams and how Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp really split that target share down the middle. And obviously Goff, loves targeting that slot at times. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to continue to be very good in both in real life and fantasy. I don't think anyone's saying, that his targets are just going to drop off because of Jameson Williams. But I think maybe they would cap each other's ceiling, assuming that they're going to continue to run a similar offense with Goff, where he's going to distribute the football, fairly evenly between them, and assuming they pick up a tight end as well.
Yeah, I love that. Mike, the guy that, I put this poll out and I started doing these tiers, and I started doing this in December, and the knocks I was getting when I was saying, everybody told me I was way too low on Christian Watson. I had him in that 110 range. You look at the Twitter poll right now, 1.8, 76% would rather have that. 1.9, 68%. He's moved that value-wise to that 110, and it's all got to be based off of speculation of Aaron Rodgers leaving, right? And Jordan Love being down there, because what he did in 14 games, 66 targets, 611 yards, 7 touchdowns, and he is in an area where he averaged 9.3 targets over those final 7 games, 2.26 yards per route run. I mean, that is the only 5 rookies to do that in the last 5 years is Chase, Jefferson, McLaurin, Brown, and Debo. So, I mean, is this the next star wide receiver, or are you passing and taking that 110?
Yeah, see, I think his value is a little higher than the 110 right now, even if I don't believe
I did too before I put this poll.
Yeah.
1,000 votes. And we're not talking about, you sometimes you see a Twitter poll and you see there's 17 votes. When we do one for ours, we're talking big time votes. We're not talking about like, hey, me and my uncle voted on this one. I mean, this is kind of gives you an idea of, I know Twitter is the mob, and they vote based off of what has just happened. But if they come to you and say 76% right now would take the 108, and then you get down, the only way close was that 110. I also agree. I think he's more of the 108 in my mind, 108, 19. And if someone offered me the 110, I would not take that.
I wouldn't take it, but I think you might be able to get a better player with the 110 at the same time. Possible, I don't think his value is at the 110 per se, but I think I might prefer what I can get with that pick at the same time.
Right. And we're getting to that area, right? Like we talked about this in 2022, and you and I were talking about it. And Mung, we said once you got past Jameson, Olave, and Burks in 2022, we're trading for a random 23 first. I saw someone in the Patreon say, hey, what are we giving? At what point are we, bailing on the 23 class and selling for a random 24 first? The answer to me is we're not. I am not. With what I'm seeing falling to that 8 through 11 to 12 spot, I want that player because I believe that player will be worth more than a random 24 first. If you have that situation, this is not the year where I was saying, if you're doing this, get a 23 second and give them a 24 third. Get more. This second round is just absolutely loaded. When you hear some of the guys we're going to talk about on the next pod, it is loaded. So we're not necessarily advocating just selling any of these towards the latter part of this first round. As you've been saying, Christian Watson was absolutely hot. Now we're saying 110, we'd probably be in that same area, and I think that's just a testament to how good this class is going to be, how deep this class is going to be. Mung, another guy, and I know we're trying to keep the time moving here. George Pickens was someone that Dynasty Twitter absolutely fell in love with. He makes some phenomenal one-handed catches. You look at things, he finished 800 yards, 52 receptions as a rookie with another, like all of our 22 rookies, right? Playing with poor quarterback play. Kenny Pickett started to pick it up there towards the end a little bit. Among the 59 wide receivers with 70-plus targets, he's number one in contested catches. We know he makes those beautiful catches. Is it highlight films, or is this a player that we should necessarily be trusting versus right now Twitter says he's even with the 112. You know, a month ago I said 110. I was getting ripped up. Now you see these players starting to back up a little bit in comparison to picks. So first, talk to me about Pickens, and then smash or pass the 112 or George Pickens.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower on both Pickens and Watson here. I would lean those first round picks in the late range. And again, I'm still early in my 2023 research, but I mean, looking at the guys going in that range, I like both Sean Tucker and Tank Bigsby quite a bit. Depending on where they end up, I think both of them could be contributors as soon as week one of their rookie years.
Well, we got to look at that, right? Like, as far as we talk about the big five, but then it's like if Zach Evans goes to the right place, or we're not even moving these running backs up yet. We're not even talking about that Will Levis and Richardson likely both go in the first. Whoever goes to Miami, that is a beautiful situation, right? There's so many running back needy situations where Bigsby, Charbonnet, Tucker, they're going to get bumped up there. So these values are going to continue to drop. And sorry, I just get excited with 23 first, so I got to interject in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. And I think my issue with Watson and Pickens are, I think they'll be great in best ball. I don't know how reliable they're going to be from week to week because they certainly make those splash plays and they're very good on certain catches. But I just don't know that they're worth paying up for when you can get, I don't know, say like a Donovan Peoples-Jones, right, for a late second or early third, something along those lines.
Mike's eyes just perked up there a little bit. He said DPJ.
Yeah, and I just don't know that they're those true difference makers that you look for on your fantasy roster. I think they're contributors at a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 level. And for me, I think especially with still the hype of this 2023 rookie class, you're going to be able to get those guys plus for the 1.9, 110 in a few months, if not now.
Mike, Josh Brown was the guy we were kind of getting everything going. That's at JB Under Shepherd when we were talking about this. And his boy, we know he's a big Commanders fan. And 112 or Jahan Dotson, 54% said that they would prefer the 112. It's almost dead even with the 201. I come to you today and I say, yo, I'm going to give you the 201 for Jahan Dotson. Smash or pass? And a little bit extra on this one. What kind of Oreo would you consider Jahan Dotson to be?
Yeah, I would smash the 201. And I think Dotson he's like the gingerbread one, where you can, it's an extra sweet Oreo. So they make this gingerbread one and it's like, they put way too much sugar in it. And it's the cake itself is a little too, I don't know. It's not a normal Oreo. So it's not that it's not good. You just can't have a lot of it,
Is it a lazy take? That I was leaning towards the red velvet ones just because of the color matches the Commander's color, and I got to give a shout out to one of our listeners. I play in a league with him. His son, that's Mike Young. His son one time had those red velvet Oreos, smeared it all over the carpet. It did not come out. The dye that's been put in Oreos. And Mung, if you don't like in the Patreon, they're always just referencing those two guys. Shout out to Josh. We miss you, buddy. We wanted to just throw a little Jahan Dotson takes in here. I mean, Mike, we're looking at a guy 523 yards, 7 touchdowns, but 5 drops and just 61 targets. So I mean, half of Twitter loves him. The other half is like, hey, let's move him.
I really like him. I love Dotson, actually. I just really love this class, and I think that you're going to get some crazy value at the beginning of the second. You're talking about the 2020 class when Higgins and JJ went at the beginning of the second. You're talking about that kind of draft. You're going to push all that value. People like Downs, Hyatt. Those would be first round picks in 2022. I know that we're talking about these rookie wide receivers now for that class, but they would be a first round pick easily. They'd be going over guys like Watson and Dotson in a second because that's the kind of profile they have in college. So it's just a testament to all the value that's going to be pushed back to the second round.
for both of you guys, I got to ask right now, let's talk strictly 22 rookie wide receivers. Out of the guys that we've talked about, maybe some of the guys we haven't talked about, who is your biggest buy low candidate and who is your biggest sell high? Based off of what we've said, based off trades that you guys get tagged in trades all the time, and who is your biggest buy out of that 22 class? Is it one of the guys that we mentioned, or is it a Wan'Dale Robinson, a David Bell, a John Mechie? Who is that biggest buy for you out of this class right now?
Yeah, it's Jahan Dotson, because I think people are super off of him because he plays for Washington. And I think people are also thinking he's touchdown dependent because a lot of his production did come due to touchdowns as a rookie. But at the same time, he was phenomenal. I mean, looking back at some of the plays that he made with some off-target throws, and I mean, his quarterbacks were Wentz. Howell looked okay in his one start against Dallas, and Taylor Heineke. I mean, I don't know that any quarterback situation was worse than Washington in 2022. I think Dotson, he's a guy that I missed on, who I wasn't super high on last offseason when I was going through my rookies, and, better late than never, but, there's time to rectify your mistakes, right? It's never too late. And I would rather have Dotson over Christian Watson. I would take Dotson over, who else did we talk about? Pickens. And I would consider Dotson over Treylon Burks as well. And that's how high I am on him. And I think that his stock is someone that I'm definitely looking to buy low on if you can get him for a second round.
For both of you guys, if you're doing that, if you're trying to, you drafted Burks or Watson, how much difference, Mike, in value could you get on top of Jahan Dotson if that's the deal? So, I mean, a lot of times we try to look at those guys and we assess those breakouts, and if that buy low is Jahan Dotson for you and you have Treylon Burks, what kind of value difference are you looking at between those two players?
I would.
Could you get a 23 second?
So, yeah. Oh, absolutely. If we're valuing Burks at the 108 right now, and we're talking about Dotson at the 112, 201, there's a 23 second difference in those pick values, I think, personally. So if that's where their value is in the market, I think you easily get a 23 second, or you could do a swap. If you maybe, I love doing the first second swap. I don't think it happens in this scenario, but I'm collecting 24 first everywhere I can right now. Even 25 first, I would try to collect those at the moment as well. So
people are asking that, Mike, we talk about it a lot. We talk about that 24-1-2 flop or that 2-3, and people are like, what do you mean? And it's like, you just take your pick. It seems real basic, but I had 6 or 7 people, like, they're new to the listeners and they want to say, what does that even mean? You're like, you're giving up your second to get there first. And a lot of times it's that extra sweetener, right? For you, it insulates your trade a little bit better. Even if it's a 2-3 swap, sometimes that could be a huge difference between, say, 202 and 308. Like a lot of times John and I talk about we're perpetually winning, so we do that with our third round picks, because that 312 versus what might be a 2-4 is a huge gap, especially in a year like this. So I like that a lot. Mike, who would be your biggest buy out of this group?
Right now I can't stop buying London because he was kind of going as the wide receiver one in most drafts last year, and now he's not viewed as the wide receiver one of this class. So it's really nice. I think you can get London plus for Olave right now, for example, even though we're talking about taking London over him in, current value and comparing him to the 23 class. I think a lot of the community still views Olave as a better player than London, just based off of that last season. So if you can use last season to get London plus for Olave, I'd strongly suggest doing that.
I like that cascade there. I mean, I know last week I was really trying to say I'm moving off, say, AJ Brown for Wilson and a ton. Right now, the ship has sailed. I can't buy Garrett Wilson anywhere. I went out there and all 15 of my leagues, no one's even budging. So now this week, I've gone after London, and I just saw a trade from @JerryBetts. Mung, I'm going to let you handle this one first. And I know Smash accepts the trades. We're kind of more talking value, but I mean, I just saw a guy You know, he gets Drake London. He gave up George Pickett in the 109. So you're looking at Pickett, which is going that 110 to 12 range. You're looking at 2 late firsts or Drake London. Both you guys, I mean, is that a smash or a pass for you? Are you taking London or are you taking 2 late firsts?
Wait, you said Pickett. Did you mean Pickens?
Pickens in 109. My apologies.
Gotcha. I would lean London unless you think you can sell the 109 for more on the clock in a few months' time.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the value is definitely on Pickens in the pick, but that's only if you are a mover. I think that makes sense for you if you plan, like Monk said, just moving off of one of those pieces immediately, and then, you know, kind of getting value at. So it's a cascading trade where you kind of look at the end and you got, you know, some really good piece for your team. So you can look at that really good piece plus Pickens or plus the 109, as opposed to just Pickens in the 109. So you can kind of move off of those pieces and make it a bigger trade. But, you know, straight up within a vacuum, I think I still take London, you know, without moving any of those pieces and without, you know, thinking about kind of moving off of that. I think I would definitely take the better player in London over those.
Yeah, and I had one London share I sold for what were at the time 2 random 23 firsts, ended up being 106 and 108, and I'm happy with that, you know, because there I feel like I'm going to get probably Addison and Quentin Johnson, you know, a 2-for-1 kind of deal. Mung, on the flip side, out of everybody there, and I know you mentioned some of them, and maybe there's other guys on the list, who's that biggest sell for you right now where we're trying to cash out, we're trying to get that 22 value, and we're trying to move it into a 23 first or 23 second, and so who's that guy, and what are you trying to get for him based off of what we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, real quick, one more buy low for me, not from the 2022 class, but again, I'll give a little bonus take for those listeners who stick with us till the end of the episode.
Yeah, we always do these around like the 57 to 60 minute mark.
I think a big buy low right now is Rashad Bateman because his stock has really fallen. He's a guy that I would take, you know, over Christian Watson, over Burks, and over Pickens in that range, over Dotson as well. Because we saw him really flash when he was healthy. And the biggest indicator for me is they parted ways with Greg Roman. It sounds like they want Lamar Jackson back and they want to open up the passing offense a little bit. So a healthy Bateman coming back next year, I'll be in on him a lot at his current cost. And then the sell high for me is Garrett Wilson, just because like you both said, I think he's in that same tier for me as London Olave, where a lot of people have him in a clear tier above. And so, again, depending on what you can get on top of Olave or London or any of those, you know, top 5 rookie picks, I would look to potentially sell Wilson, despite how good he was and despite how good I do think he will be.
Same question for you, Mike. Biggest sell out of this 22 class? Maybe it's none, but who's that guy? Who are you selling?
Yeah, I love that. I think all my sells are situational. You know, I think if Rodgers went to the Jets and Wilson all of a sudden, like Monk said, goes above the 103 in value, I think Wilson becomes a sell. Even if I don't want to do it, I think I have to do it at that point because, you know, if you're going to get that much value for a player, if you can see, even if you love a player and you see their value go to a point where you don't think they can ever go above that point, you have to sell them. And that's the hardest part of Dynasty for me is taking players that I absolutely love, seeing their value go through the roof, and then sell them. And then maybe buy them back again at a cheaper price.
And that's why tiers are so important, right? We talk about navigating those tiers. And if you can, I know Mung and I talk about it all the time, where it's like, hey, if you have Wilson, Olave, and London in the same tier, move down, you know, add a little bit of value, and maybe you can buy them back there in the end. I mean, guys, this was a fun episode. Hopefully we gave you guys enough content and enough, you know, information that you guys can go out there and feel comfortable with your, you know, evaluations of the 23 first class, of what the 22s are going to be, how they're going to be moving in the process. And for our closing, we know at Smash Accept, we always say, and it's been my thing, enjoy the process. I'm reaching out to you guys, Mike and I are saying, what can be the closing? So if any of you guys have literally listened to the 59-minute mark, hit us up. What's a great idea to close out with Smash or Pass? But for now, thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process.